So this beautiful rhododendron here is called Lem's Monach. It's just coming into flower, and as you can see, it's a beautiful pink in bud and then opens to white with some little pink dots in the centre of the flower. And this afternoon we're going to layer this rhododendron. And you might well ask, why is it that we need to layer a rhododendron? Could we not take its seed? Could we take cuttings from it? Why do we need to layer a plant like this to produce more plants? And the answer to the first question about cuttings is that larger leaf rhododendrons like this simply will not take from cuttings, or if they do, it takes a very long time and the failure rate is enormous. Secondly, you can see that this plant has actually produced seed last year, so why is it that we couldn't grow those seeds? And the answer to that is very simple, and that is because there are so many different rhododendrons with different coloured flowers growing all around here in the garden that the seedlings that come up would not be true to name of this beautiful rhododendron. So our only real solution is to try and layer this plant. It's been here about 15 years and it's quite well grown up from the base, but there are a few branches that Jaimie and Michael can now consider layering. So we're starting again now, and we've got to decide which branch we're going to actually layer of this plant. Meanwhile, the dog attempts to eat one of the flowers. So Jaimie's going to have a look and see which way we go. And there's a branch that's reasonably close to the ground, but when we bend it down, there's a severe danger that that branch is going to actually snap. So I don't think that's the branch we should use. We need to find another one. So as we move around to the side, we've got a branch here that is much lower to the ground, but we need to, probably we'll take the flowers off to start with, because we don't want energy being wasted on flowers. We want the energy to go into this plant rooting. Seems a bit of a shame, but there we go. So we got rid of the flowers, and what that'll mean is that the new growth will come more quickly now that the flowers have gone. And so Jaimie's spreading out the branches so that you can, what we want to do is to end up with half a dozen separate plants. And so we're going to just remove any bits of growth like that one, which wouldn't tuck in nicely into the ground. And effectively we've now got what should hopefully be 4, 5 or maybe even 6 separate little layers. And we'll now pause while Jaimie gets the ground ready to go to the next stage. So first of all, we're going to just lightly fork the ground over the bare ground underneath the branch. We're not digging a great pit, we're just breaking up the hardness of the soil underneath where the layers are going to be made. So the mix of soil and leaf mould that we're going to use to entice the plant to grow is a mixture basically of molehills and of well-rotted leaf mould compost. And we're mixing the two together to create a very light, loamy mixture, which when the roots start to form in the soil, they'll be able to spread quickly and easily to create a new rooted plant. Molehills provide the very best topsoil, and it's the easiest way to find the very best topsoil without looking very far. Okay, so we're now starting to prepare the soil into which we're going to embed the layers. And the molehill loam we've used is very good at retaining moisture, which is why we're going to use it. So we literally just created a large mound well above ground level, which we're going to, Jaimie's now patting into place. So we're just pushing those branches down into the soil, so they're going to be quite well covered for quite a long bit of the branch. And we're going to Jaimie's just going to nick the bark where it's going to touch the soil, and that will help induce the rooting. And that's where the rooting will take place. The scarring will act to encourage the plant to start putting out some roots. So it's just a gentle scarring, not too much. But the scar creates a wound. As the wound tries to heal, it will form roots. And to assist the rooting process, we're going to use some hormone rooting powder where the scar has occurred, and just a dab on the stem around there. Not too much, just a little touch. This is the same hormone rooting powder as you'd use to root cuttings. And in this case, we're using it to root a rhododendron layer. So that just takes a moment. And now we've got to pin these branches in place, because it's essential that they don't move in the wind at all. And for that, we're going to use a number of piles of rocks from a good old Cornish hedge, and we start perhaps with some lighter ones, and as we get the branches embedded in the soil, so we can just get them basically in place. And then we can just pause and think whether or not we're going to be able to get those layers into a position where they absolutely won't move. It may be that we need to tie a small stake to the further back on the branch itself, just to be absolutely certain that there's no movement. But we'll see how we go once we've set all these stones in place. Now, the stones help to anchor our layers in place, but they also conserve water. And when the weather is hot, they will stop evaporation, and they will also cause condensation to form on the undersides of these stones, and any degree of moisture retained in that soil will assist the whole rooting process. So we're building something of a little castle around here, but you can already see how the layers are starting to point upwards, and that is obviously how we hope that they will root and grow on. Another advantage of using these stones is that it prevents birds or other wildlife going in and scuffing around and making a mess. And let's just have a waggle of the branch, Jaimie, and just see whether we need to. Do you think that needs a little post?
It should be okay, but we can put one in.
And then we're going to tie that into the stem. Probably only need to tie it in for the first year, but that makes doubly sure that if we have a strong gale of wind, nothing can move. So we've got our layer in place, and the final thing to do is to water down the soil. We hope for a bit of rain in the next day or two, which will help do the job. But a little bit of water to kick-start the whole process. And you can see how the water sits on these stones and how the moisture will be retained in underneath this little fortress we've built round the layers. Now those layers will sit for probably 3 or 4 years. If things go well, these shoots will develop and start to grow up. And in 2 or 3 years' time, we'll have layers which have clearly rooted and they're growing up this far. And in about year 2 or probably year 3, we will half cut through the stems. So there will still be energy and nutrition coming through to the layer, but the layer will have to rely on its own roots to take hold and grow on properly. And then in year 4, hopefully we've got 4 or 5 really good big plants. We'll sever the stems completely. Out will come the plants with a good crop of root, ready to be moved somewhere else, ready to start the life of this rhododendron, which is probably only 50 or 60 years, ready to start again to produce something as beautiful as this, but more to the point, absolutely identical to this. So layering is a specialist thing. It takes quite a while to do a layer properly, and obviously we spent a lot of time today preparing to do all this, but it's not something that you should be afraid of doing in your own garden, not just with rhododendrons, but with many other shrubs which are valuable and difficult to propagate by any other means. It's a long drawn out business, takes 3 or 4 years, but at the end of the day, it's well worth it and it costs nothing.